Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good, Nasser. Good to see you again. Well, can't see you. We're on their podcast, right? But I'm
Good.
back and I'm happy to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. I
Yeah.
had a lot going on, went to my friend's wedding in Turkey, came back, had a weekend to honestly de-stress, and then went to Burning Man, which is one of
Wow.
my kind of work. So that was an amazing experience. Always being disconnected is great. Had to jump
Absolutely.
on a couple of calls here and there, but that didn't really take away from the experience. Still got to make the best out of it. So I'm very happy to be back to my routine and my office and doing the podcast, which can explain why we basically haven't launched an episode for September until now. But hey, we're here.
We're here. We're ready and we're live. And I'm excited to be back. Excited to have you back, safe back from the travels. Yeah, it's certainly been a few couple of interesting days, especially in the news and cybersecurity. But I think life in general, right? And it's good to be back on the Now at Night podcast to get those good vibes coming back and start to focus around our next topic, especially our next guest, which really excited to start to introduce here as well.
Awesome. Before we get to that, that actually is kind of something I wanted to discuss with you and something for all of our listeners to keep in mind, which is the idea of separating work and life. I think that we fortunately work for a company that has a big emphasis on, hey, take your time off, don't overburn yourself, know your boundaries, set your own boundaries, and kind of don't exhaust yourself trying to do something or get someone on the phone or any of these things. So, what do you do in your own personal life to make sure that you're not letting work overstep into your own personal life and the other way around?
Yeah, and that's actually an area that we need to be talking more about. Mental health is one thing, but really taking that into every single day, self-awareness, making
Ab-
sure that we have taking time to just prepare ourselves for the day and
Absolutely.
disconnect from all these screens, right? The technology
No,
and having just time for ourselves. I think that's such a really well-stated statement. And something I can personally relate to as well. I think we get caught up in all the mixture of
absolutely.
having to know all this information first and foremost, right? And then post about it. But there's all this opportunity out there to see so much more in this world that can provide a lot more beautiful experiences and memories for many, many, many years to come.
Absolutely. And honestly, this actually reminds me of a quote from one of our colleagues here, Todd Miser. He had shared at the beginning of the year that nothing really stresses him out, especially when we're working in corporate America, because he has actually been to war. He had served before and he had
Wow.
seen death in front of his eyes.
Oh,
So
wow.
knowing that experience and honestly sharing all of that, he was like saying, we are fortunate enough to work in a sector where no one's life is really dependent on it. I mean, of course, income and all of that is definitely something to keep in mind. And we're definitely speaking out of a place of privilege, having a roof on top of our head and food in our fridge. But in general,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to all kind of understand that when you are working, you're working to sustain your life. You're not living to work, if that makes sense.
Mm.
This is something that definitely needs to kind of be reiterated more. One of the things that I personally honestly do, I always start my days pretty early. Like I'm usually up and in front of my computer by 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. After I walk the dogs, after I honestly take a walk for my own self. One of the things that I try to do is that once the clock hits 5, I'm gonna shut off my computer. I don't care if there's something that is on fire. I don't care if someone needs something by a specific time. If the clock hits 5, I'm gonna turn off my computer. There are some exceptions here and there where I would stay beyond 5 if it's a really critical thing or if I really have to attend to a fire or something of that sort. But if I know that within this something I can do tomorrow morning or something that can wait a couple more days, I kind of am learning to kind of segregate between my own personal life and work life, and I don't want that to overstep the 5 p.m. mark. And that's one of the rules that I'm trying to live by. Um, and again, there are exceptions here and there, but for the most part, I'm very proud of myself for actually adhering to that. What helps me also is that I take my pre-workout around 4:30.
Gotta have
The
that
clock,
pre-workout.
exactly, the clock hits 5. I'm already jittery and I need to just jump to the gym. So that's definitely something that helps me out.
That's just absolutely fantastic that you have taken this regimen and this time for yourself. Because I want to really reinstate what Nasser is saying here, and for everyone who's listening, Work-related stress is a real thing. It can
Mhm.
contribute to so many areas of your life, right? Depression, mental health issues.
Totally.
You have an emotional battery, just like we recharge our phones, right? Every single night we recharge our phones. We need to, recharge our emotional batteries, so to speak,
Yeah.
because that helps us prevent that burnout and maintain better productivity, both in our personal and professional aspirations and just life in general. So I love that you have this time, Nasser, just to disconnect, right? You
Exactly.
get up, you do the gym, you have time for yourself to focus on things that inspire you, give you happiness, right? Your your animals, your family, your friends, right? It's so important to make sure that we have that time for ourselves to recharge that emotional battery so that when we do need to show up, right, in the event, right, there are certain circumstances, but hey, we can show up, but we show up 100% our true authentic selves. And I
Absolutely.
think that's something that we need to take away from what you just stated.
Totally. And honestly, like especially in my own position,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am pursuing my own like my master's degree after like work. And I'm also now part of the certified technical architect program.
That's right. That's right.
Don't want
Very
to
stressful situations.
I don't want to boil the ocean. I don't want to
Right.
chew more than I can or what is it? Bite more than I can chew.
Yeah.
Uh So it's very important to you to actually understand your own limits and understand when you are doing way too much and how to
Yes.
prioritize things in your life. I mean, after all, you have to prioritize yourself, you have to prioritize your own mental health, you have to prioritize your family, your animals, your friends, all of that, because those people need you and you need to be there for them when they want.
Mm,
So
yes.
just to kind of put this thought with all of our listeners. Just make sure that you're not doing too much when it's not really necessary, and make sure that you clear time for yourself, and make sure that you truly are enjoying what you're doing.
Love what you do and finding your passions. I think that's spot on, Nasser. So, with that, let's go ahead and introduce our next podcast host, Andrew Robinson. He has been an advocate of not only ServiceNow, but also a father, a friendly lover of all animals, and someone who really likes to get into the technical weeds and demonstrate the complexities in a really easy and methodical way, especially approaching mental health. So let's go ahead and transition over to our next guest, Andrew Robinson. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned before, Andrew, we'll keep this very casual, very laid back. I'm going to go ahead and start off with an introduction, and then I'll have you give yourself a kind of very general introduction of who you are, where you're located, and just a fun fact about yourself, and then we'll proceed into the series of questions. Sound good?
Yeah, yeah, sounds good.
Beautiful. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're back on the Now at Night podcast, and I have with me one of the rising stars in ServiceNow, Andrew Robinson. I am extremely grateful and just blessed to have you on our podcast. You have certainly put a lot of spaces and places with your name and stamp of approval on it. We're really excited to see all the different areas that we're going to be discussing today. Just extremely, extremely happy to have you on this call. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and have Andrew just provide a brief introduction, and then we'll start going into some of the fun questions on our Now at Night podcast. So, Andrew, please let me pass the microphone to you. Just give us a brief introduction for our podcasters and our listeners out there.
Hi, everybody. My name's Andrew Robinson. I am a ServiceNow developer at AXA UK, and ServiceNow Rising Star 2024, and also a speaker at the 2023 London World Forum.
Wow, fantastic. And that's just another area that I certainly want to get into. I do have a question around how that World Forum speaking event did go. Just a question now that we have you on. So you mentioned that you've been working into the ServiceNow community. How long have you been working in the ServiceNow environment?
Ooh, I've been working for around 8 years.
8 years. Wow. That's quite a long time. And is that something you've always aspired to do is work within that ServiceNow developer mindset, or what was something you were doing prior to the ServiceNow ecosystem?
No, if I'm honest with you, I originally wanted to get into the SAP landscape because
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, no, it was strange. So when I originally started, I started out as a manager of a service desk. And
Mm,
it was originally for an SAP service desk. And at the time, I thought that's great. I'm finally in the SAP space because prior to that, I was a super user.
yeah.
But the consultancy decided to bring in ServiceNow as their ITSM tool. And I developed it so well. They said, well, you might as well, become the developer for it and also, move away from the management role and just do that full time. And then the rest is history, really.
Wow. So you really came from those kind of humble beginnings as a service desk technician, and then you really just rolled your sleeves up and decided, you know what, I think I'm going to build something, develop it, and now we see that recognition, obviously, through your ServiceNow Rising Star. But that's fantastic to hear. So now that you've been into the ServiceNow community space, I'm sure you've seen how large and how extensible a lot of these use cases are starting to really proliferate. Where do you see yourself maybe in the next 2 to 3 years? Do you feel you'll continue down the ServiceNow route, or are you looking into other industries or other areas of development?
Well, that's the thing with ServiceNow. Like, it's just one of those things that's just constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It changes all the time, and that's the thing that I really enjoyed about ServiceNow because it's so easy to customize, and in
Yeah.
it, you can script, and whereas other software that's currently out there, it's just not as versatile. It's quite rigid from a technical perspective, and it's just the freedom of creativity. I mean, where I see myself, I definitely still using ServiceNow and still developing it for the future. I mean, the way that it's come on in the past 8 years, it's completely unrecognizable compared to what it was, back when I first started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well said. One of the things I resonate with you is just your ability to take your super user skill set, but provide a very easy way to articulate these very complex solutions that ServiceNow provides, and in general, right? Coding, developing, scripting, anything with some type of architectural framework, extremely hard to do. Andrew, I have to applaud you. You make it look so easy. I've seen your posts. I've seen, you've got Pokemon, Pokedexes, you've got all these interesting use cases that I think are really inspiring. And I think that's the creativity that you are invoking in this discussion and many others that I hope you know. So I'm extremely a big fan of yours, so you know.
Oh,
And it's fantastic to see that that creativity is what continues to instill and influence better collaboration with our people, right? And it's always going to be about our people. And on that note, I did want to just transition into what you had mentioned around that creativity aspect. Outside of the work realm, right? Putting the keyboard away and throwing the mouse into the drawer. What are some fun things that you enjoy to do? What is maybe one fun hobby outside of the work ethic and the professional things that you bring to the table? What are some fun things you like to do outside of work?
I'm not going to lie to you. I am a bit of a nerd. Um, I,
Like me as well. We are from the same kin, I imagine.
I know it doesn't come across in my post, but yeah, I'm a bit
Yeah.
honest. So in my spare time, I enjoy building computers.
Mm,
I
same.
like putting them apart and putting them back together again. I collect consoles. Um, I collect like games. I also like just to go on hikes. So I have two dogs, two spaniels.
Oh,
It,
beautiful.
it's 2,000 miles all the time. So when I'm out clearing my head, out on hikes. And the funny thing is, when I don't know if anybody else is the same. It helps me clear my head, and I always come up with some kind of solution. So I'm always off to my other half. Like I'll voice note her and I say, right, I'm out walking the dogs, and I've got this really good idea. I just need to voice note you just so I can remember it.
Oh, I love that. I love that practice. I've actually done that as well. A voice note, a kind of a voice note to myself or a voice message to myself, a recording, because I'll have some of those moments of, my own brilliancy, like I like to call, a brilliant moment, a light bulb moment. And I want to make sure I'll capture that, especially when I'm out doing fun things like spending time with my dogs or my chickens. And so I'm very much just like you, very much a big nerd, super nerd. I love disassembling machines, whether they're engines, like actual physical engines, or computers, or building off of PCB boards or Raspberry Pis, and then trying to make things talk to each other. So very much can relate to you in that space. I think it's fantastic that you have two dogs. What are their names?
Rosie, Rosie and Riley.
Rosie and Riley. Oh, they sound like a riot. I have
Oh,
a
God.
Ruby. Ruby is one of my dogs.
Oh,
Um,
what do you have?
she is a boxer mix, so she
Oh,
goes 2,000 miles per hour every day. And then the other one is Trixie. She's just turned 10. So she's slowing down a little bit, but she's still got kick in her step. And she's a beautiful, she's got foxhound, but more beagle mix in her. So she
oh,
looks primarily like kind of a big beagle. But rather tall for a beagle, not as low to the ground as you'd expect a beagle to be. So yeah, fantastic that you have those kind of extracurricular activities. Another question I had, just, and I think that's a good transitional point. We talk about creativity, we talk about externally facing hobbies and just having some time for ourselves. And that's one thing I've noticed in the security space specifically, and also in the ServiceNow space, and really in general with technology. We're starting to see a lot of success as well as some type of concern around generative AI. And I'm always curious. This is a question I'm asking a lot of my colleagues, and my family members. What is kind of your take on AI, and if there's something you'd like to have it invoke or do, or maybe find a solution for, what might that be? I'm always curious to see what other folks out there in the world are seeing as well as observing. So I'll pose that question. What are your thoughts on AI in general? And again, just keep it general, but also where do you see it invoking some positive outcomes, both professionally and maybe personally?
so I think that ChatGPT and general AI is really good if, let's say, if used correctly. So I get what people are saying, that it's going to be taking our jobs away. But in the grand scheme, it's also there to help us. So a good example is you could use Gen AI to summarize your update sets, for example. So instead of you having to write out your technical documentation, have AI do it for you. In terms of asking it to script and do all, let's say, the work of a developer, you can do that, but
Right.
there's only a certain amount of experience, sorry, there's only a certain amount that experience can bring to the table. So, for example, if let's say you have something overly complicated, from a developer standpoint, somebody could have already done that a while ago. Whereas if you ask an AI, they'll just get confused with themselves. So, I mean, it's good. It'll definitely save time. But in terms of it taking people's jobs away, I can't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's well stated. I think we're still very much in the early stages of what we can use the AI for, very specifically, as well as where we can start to see how I think, in my mind, you know, we need to make sure we're positioning obviously mental health as first and foremost priority. I think AI can help us have much more intelligent discussions,
Yeah.
not only with these different types of models and AI agents, but I think it can start to be reflective upon how we do business as humans. So we need to make sure that we're really assessing what's really important to us, what's going to be a method of, success for securing these different types of conversations we have with AI and ChatGPT and these different models, as well as are these discussions safe harbor, right? Are they safe for me? Are they safe for my own privacy? And are there specific areas that we can use AI for hospitals, for schools, right? For people that really truly need to have automated flows that will allow them to focus on much bigger, impactful areas that might be more focused on the persona, right? So to your point, we're always going to need the person, people. People will always have to go through and follow through some type of approval process, a recommendation. I don't feel that we're going to leverage AI and only solely rely on that as this is the approval, right? This is going to be the one-stop shop for everything. And I'm going to take everything that this iterative system says with 100% trust and accuracy, right? So I think to your point, well said. I think we're very much in the early stages. And I think there are a lot of iterative use cases that are helpful for businesses. But I think we also need to be mindful that we need to slow down, take our time, and be very purposeful on where we're having these AI generative solutions invoked within the spaces. So really appreciate that insight.
Yeah, exactly. And I've spoken to people in the past who
Yeah.
have this whole ServiceNow thing's easy, and
Hmm.
like, how so? And they said, well, I just put it all into Chat GPT, and I was just absolutely flabbergasted and
Yeah.
just like, how,
Yes.
how can you even say that? That's just insulting. Just even
Right.
like even stating that. However, yeah, there's only a certain level you can get to on AI before you start running into problems. And if you think you can sort of like fake it till you make it, it's not going to end well for you.
It's not going to exactly. Well, and that's the thing that we need to make sure we understand, right? We certainly can't monetize off of, using all of this technology and then just saying it does all these things, right? Because faking it till we make it shows me that you haven't gone through the years of boots on the ground experience, having those tools actually in your toolbox and going through the trial and error and troubleshooting and triaging that folks like Andrew have done to pave the way for trailblazers to showcase their skill set, that the machine only does the things I tell it to do because I've programmed it to do such things, right? And so we are the programmers, we are the developers, we are the philosophers of this space. And historically, AI has been here since 50s, 60s, maybe even the 40s. I think we've seen AI, and now we're now leveraging these new large language models and natural query languages and different types of repositories to help us, calculate what's real and what's not. So I really love that how you mentioned that, right? Faking it till you make it does not work. And you need to know that your skills and sharpening all of those attributes on your resume and in your portfolio, it's important because what you showcase out in the world is your brand. And, a business or a person's not going to say otherwise. You know exactly who you are. And this is exactly why we're here to help establish those common areas of concern to make sure that we provide a mental space for all of us to just share our voice because it's extremely valuable. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no problem.
And two other things here I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. There's a lot of chatter, and I think this also goes into the AI, ecosystem. It's extremely hard to find jobs these days, Andrew. And I get questions, I get pinged constantly on how can I improve my output, right? How can I stand out from the rest of the crowd? And how can I really, attain this dream job or role that I'm trying to get out there, knowing that there's millions upon millions of unemployed, not just technologists, but people in general are trying to get, low cost labor jobs or just jobs in general in the tech space. So I'd like to ask you this, Andrew, and pose this question. Are there any resources or YouTube channels or anything you recommend that have helped shaped who Andrew is today that maybe you could share with our listeners that would be helpful to help them maybe jumpstart their career, maybe ServiceNow, maybe developing, right? Just something that might help, right, create that spark and that pulse to just reinvigorate that persona who's looking at a lot of these different jobs that unfortunately are either rejected or no response or just ghosted, right? What are some maybe recommendations or resources that have been, attributed to your success, especially now that we've seen your success as a rising star here?
Oh, thank you. So if I'm honest with you, it has just been trial and error with myself. And I would probably say to make yourself stand out is to everybody's on LinkedIn, regularly post on LinkedIn, even if it's just something that you've done in your day from a professional standpoint. And then what you need to do is on your resume or CV, reference your LinkedIn profile, and then people will just look at it and say, this person seems like this person seems okay. Let's take him in for the next stage. So it's all about making sure you've got those different avenues, and also just be truthful. At the end of the day, most employers don't particularly want to see a whole raft of jargon and this is what I did here, here, and here, because I can imagine it would just get exhausting. So it's just all about keeping it short, sweet, to the point, and just be honest about who you are and what you're capable of.
Well said, Andrew. I love that last sentiment on just be yourself, be who you are, right? I think we can all be hungry and humble, but I think just keeping it extremely simple, right? It's overcomplicating something can certainly become extremely cumbersome, and it can also create maybe some blockers for the recruiter to understand who am I hiring, right? What am I looking at? They seem to have all these great things, but who is this person, right? What can they truly bring that helps sets them apart from other resumes that are usually copy paste, right? So to
Yeah.
your point, it's again, we're all unique in our own ways. We all have extremely valuable skills and attributes, as well as, emotional empathy, which I think this is extremely important for those that are listening. Leading conversations with empathy, it's half the battle because you really pose how you're representing yourself as a person, as a brand, but also professionally, showing up with your best efforts to make sure that you have the efficacy you want to bring to this customer or to this company, as well as maybe just working for yourself, right? Maybe you want to just be a consultant and reach out to Andrew for some additional resources, right? And so this is why this is such a great podcast, and I really appreciate you, Andrew, jumping on here because this is exactly what it's all about. It's about community, networking. So to your point, posting on LinkedIn, it doesn't have to be every day. Make it purposeful. Make it for when it matters to you. If you have something you need to voice that you feel is valuable to the whole world, post it. That's exactly why we have these social media sharing capabilities to be able to professionally showcase your work, right? Just like Andrew's done in his many, many years as a ServiceNow developer and as an advocate. Now, I really appreciate that. The last thing I want to leave here is just what we call our fast five. So I'm just going to go through just very quickly one kind of response answer on just these very quick questions, kind of a rapid fire at the very end, and we'll wrap up for today's podcast. But I just had a couple fun questions for you, Andrew, if you don't mind. My first question, of course, is if you have a favorite Disney movie, what would that be?
Oh, Moana.
Oh, perfect. That's mine too. I love the chicken in that movie. Hey, hey. I
Oh,
think that's me in a nutshell as a nerd when I can't figure something out, like a script or a call. Like that's me. But Moana as a person, I feel like we can all relate, but would love to hear why you chose that.
oh no, I think it's brilliant. To be honest, most of it was because it was one of the first films that I went to go and see with my daughter at the cinema,
Yeah.
and I remember just the songs and everything. And every time I watch it, I don't know, it just makes me smile for some reason.
I love that. I love that. Made me smile too. So fantastic movie. Great, great, great answer.
Yeah, and also the songs are fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely iconic for sure. All right. Now, the next question I have hopefully should be an easy one. But if you were stuck on an island and you only had to eat one food, what is that food?
Ooh, pizza.
Ooh, pizza. That's a good one. Yeah. I would have to say the wings. So I think we would get along on an island, pizza and wings.
Oh, sounds great.
I can eat one time I ate 50 pounds worth of wings in a sitting.
Ooh,
Probably not healthy. Probably shouldn't have done that, but I did it and I'm still
did,
here. So
did you walk away thinking that was totally worth it?
exactly.
Yeah,
Precisely. Precisely.
yeah.
All
No,
right.
I've done that at an all you can eat like buffet. I've walked away and I'm like, I'm in so much pain, but it was so.
Oh, let me tell you, Andrew, I did this one. I was in Texas, was traveling across to the West Coast, and on my travels, I stopped by Texas in Amarillo, and they have a place where if you eat a 72-ounce steak, it is free. Now you have to pay the $72 upfront first. If you don't finish it, guess who has to pay $72? So I went in, they live stream it on a webcam. It's the funniest thing ever. You're on a stage, there's people around you cheering. You've got to eat a 72-ounce steak with all the sides and a giant glass of water without getting up, going to the bathroom, and leaving your position. You have 1 hour to complete the assignment. That was probably one of the hardest things I've done from a food eating perspective.
I bet you, I bet you didn't want to touch steak after that, did you? I
Oh
bet.
no, you know what was funny? People were asking me, I'm sure you must have been full after that. Well, I took my leftovers home to the hotel that I was staying at. I ate that and then I finished it off with a nice pizza and a hockey game.
Oh, nice.
So I have quite the appetite, and I'm glad that my metabolism was working at that time because I think if I did that now, it might be a different story. So, well, look, fantastic. Look, Andrew, this was exactly what we wanted to achieve here, and having you on this podcast is certainly a blessing for all of us. Thank you so much again just for gracing us with your presence, with your passions within the ServiceNow space, and just continuing to be such an advocate for mental health and making sure that we all take time for ourselves, as well as being able to promote the work that we put out in the space, like in LinkedIn or social media. There are so many places that we can become super users. I think we're all super users, like you said, at the end of the day. And we all have these different types of, emotional areas where we can connect and start to collaborate very cohesively. And I think that's the message I want to leave for all of our listeners on today's Now at Night podcast. We're here for everyone. And this is a safe space where we can all invoke conversations and inspire each other to help make the world just a little bit happier and smile. So, with that, thank you so much, Andrew. I sincerely appreciate all of the time and your dedication to not only this podcast, but honestly inspiring myself and for the people I'm sure you've touched in their lives and their continued journeys within the space. So, thank you so much again, Andrew, for all your time. If there's anything you'd like to wrap up with for our listeners as well, feel free. I'll just pass the microphone over to you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're totally welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure being on with you. I would probably say, I mean, the reason why I put humor into, like a little bit of humor, a bit of geekiness into my ServiceNow posts is simply because on a daily basis, when we work, everything's so serious, and for the most part, it's enjoyable. But sometimes, you just want to sit back, have a bit of fun with it, whether it be Pokemon, whether it just be putting in some Starship Troopers movie references or references. It's all about that. And you know what? In a way, that has actually helped my mental health because when I develop service now, I actually find it quite relaxing.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
and the whole problem solving side of things. From somebody who's had various skirmishes with his mental health in the past, you know, it's hard. It really is. And do you know what? The help is out there. But if you can't find the help, there are certain things such as walking, healthy diet, clean exercise, talking to people. There's lots of services out there. So just to let you know, you're not alone.
Love that. And I think that's exactly where we'll end that. We're not alone. You can reach out, and there's always someone here to lend an ear and also just listen to just all the value that you continue to bring for everybody listening. Thank you so much, Andrew. As always, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion in our podcast today, and look forward to having you on very, very soon.
Oh, no problem at all. Thanks a lot for your time.
That was Andrew Robinson, ServiceNow Rising superstar and mental health advocate for everyone out there listening in. This is the Now at Night podcast, and we're really excited to continue into our next episode. Thank you so much to Andrew Robinson for joining us and providing a synopsis of how he provides serenity, sanity, as well as strategic areas on how he handles both his professional and personal career ambitions. With that, let's get back to the podcast and wrap things up.
To maintain healthy work-life balance, it's essential to make sure you have a personal relationship with yourself.
Absolutely.
Because having that personal relationship, back to your point, right? It's your friends, it's your family, it's pursuing hobbies outside of work. Other activities can bring you joy and fulfillment. So when we think about long-term career sustainability, and that was something that he had mentioned, it's taking care of your mental health to ensure that you can sustain your career over that long term. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not motivating you anymore or engaging you or keeping you passionate, and it's maybe potentially burning you out, maybe it's time for a change.
Absolutely. And
That's where, yeah,
yeah,
you wanted to add.
sorry to interrupt you there, but
Oh,
one thing
please.
I really wanted to emphasize here is that there are a lot of people that go into work sectors just because they think that that's where the money is at. Like I know a lot of people that unfortunately had chosen to pursue a career in coding or a career in cybersecurity, and they're not happy with what they're doing. They just wake up every day, they're trying to do the bare minimum that gets them their salary at the end of the day so they can live the lifestyle that they wanted. And there is nothing wrong with that. But if we all would take a minute to think about our actual passions and how we can turn that into a career that would actually generate money. I mean, one of the things that I'm very fortunate that my late father had kind of told me when I was choosing a major for college, he was like, don't chase the money. The money will always come if you're doing something that you love. And
Yeah,
I tried by
love
that.
that.
I really like had fallen into cybersecurity in untraditional way. But I'm so thankful. I wake up literally every day thankful that I had fallen into this sector because I thoroughly enjoy working in cybersecurity. I very much enjoy working for ServiceNow, and I love meeting people and solving their issues. So I am one of the lucky few that were fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time and follow their own passions. And I hope that all of our listeners can just take a second and think about what are their actual passions and how can they turn that into a career. And it doesn't have to be your main career. It could be something that you do on the side, something that you do on the weekends, but make sure that you actually get a second to get to know yourself and do more of the things that you love.
I love that. I mean, I'm over here smiling. You can't see it, but I'm really just motivated and taken by that because the relationship you have with your family and what I think I really resonate from that is you've set boundaries, Nasser. You've established clear boundaries between work and personal life because it's important to you to make sure you prioritize yourself. It's your you time, right? And it's making sure that you have that time to put all your things in order, right? And make sure that if there's something I really want to do that's outside of the scope of work and it's going to be fun, let's go do that fun thing because it's fun, right? Right? Let's go ride a roller coaster, read a book, get some ice cream, maybe do some flips on a trampoline. But there's so many things we can do outside of the scope of focusing on hustling and careers and all these different areas. There's other things outside of, reducing the likelihood of career burnout by invoking a lot of what Nasser had just shared, as well as our podcast host. So keep this in your back pocket. Remind yourself that you are loved, you are someone of importance. Everything you're doing right now has purpose, and we are always here to continue to aspire and dream and sustain our own mental health by being kind. And kindness costs nothing. And please pass that on. I think that is our most important message here is passing on kindness because we can absolutely create a much more sustainable and humble community as we continue to go through these different experiences in life.
Very true. And I'm just putting it out there. If anyone is listening to this podcast and they feel like they want to talk to someone or they need someone to just vent to, honestly, I'm more than happy to be that listening ear. Feel free to shoot me
Yes,
on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me an email if you want. Feel free to comment on this podcast if you'd like.
absolutely.
I'm more than happy, honestly, to discuss life with you. I'm here as a listening ear and I want to help as many people as I can.
Beautifully said. We're here to be your sounding board. Thanks again for joining the Now at Night podcast. Stay tuned for the next one and be safe.
Thanks, everyone.